Today on CityCast Houston, Mayor Whitmire wants to create a law that would benefit him, but council members are not having it. Plus, CenterPoint is coming for your money again because of their mistake. And a popular Houston food influencer has a new way to deal with racist trolls. Axios Houston reporter Shafaq Patel joins me to talk about the news from the week. And before we get to today's conversation, after we taped this episode, Mayor Whitmire announced Katy Police Chief J. Noe Diaz as Houston Police Department's new Chief of Police. Diaz replaces Troy Finner and will be officially introduced in a press conference later today. We'll have more info on this next week as well. It's Friday, August 2nd. I'm Raheel Ramzanali, and here's what Houston is talking about. Hey, Shafaq, welcome back in. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. So we published our guide to August yesterday, and one of the big responses we got were the back to school memories. We started the conversation with that. It is back to school month, right? So what is one back to school memory that you'll always remember growing up?
Oh my God. I love going back to school shopping. I think it's so fun. I went to the grocery store literally yesterday and I was just like looking at all of the fun decor. And I think that's always my favorite time was like getting ready to school. And then of course, like the Sunday before school started, I was always very nervous, but then it was always fun to see friends again. But of course, back to school shopping with my mom was always a highlight.
So much fun. Now, did your parents buy the pre-packaged supplies list or did you individually buy them?
Individually, always. Yeah. I was very picky with my colors. We couldn't buy any of like the fancy packages, but I always was very particular with like my color coding.
Nice. I love that. All right. So a lot to talk about this week. So let's start with the biggest news of the week. You kick it off. What do you got for me?
Yeah, so my big story this week is about how protesting rules in Houston might change. Earlier this week, Mayor John Whitmire proposed a ban on targeted picketing 200 feet in front of residential properties in Houston, similar to rules in Dallas. It would also prohibit any sort of issuance of permits of any demonstration in front of residential properties, even on public streets or sidewalks. So it's important to note that this proposal would be a blanket ban that would apply to all types of demonstrations, but it seems to particularly target pro-Palestinian protests that have been happening over the past few months. So organizers have been demonstrating in front of Senator Ted Cruz's home, Representative Lily Fletcher's home, and most recently, the mayor's home. So these protests have been going on for months, and these protesters have been protesting on the streets. They've been protesting in front of City Hall, and then at the last resort, they've also been protesting in front of elected officials' homes to make their statement heard. They're feeling as if they're not being heard by the mayor, and so they're taking another approach. At least that's what they've told me. Now, this proposal sort of came out as a surprise. So it expectedly got tagged by a few council members, like Councilmember Pollard and Councilmember Plummer during session this week. They brought up that rules are already in place, like noise ordinance, and also making sure that protesters don't block access. And city council members also brought in concern of how they're in the public eye, they're public officials, and it's part of their job. Meanwhile, Mayor Whitmire doubled down on his stance, saying that the ordinance is to protect peace for him and his neighbors, as well as other people's homes who gets picketed on. Some context, residential protests have been a long part of American history, but it's also not unheard of to ban residential protests.
Yeah, this one is a little complicated for me because I do understand what Mayor Whitmire is saying, like, hey, constantly at my house and for my neighbors as well, like this is happening. But at the same time, as Councilmember Letitia Plummer said, and you brought this quote up a little bit, I want to read the whole thing. She said, quote, "It's their right to protest. They have a right to express themselves. We have chosen to be elected officials. That is a risk we have taken." And she also explained that many Houston residents are living in poor conditions, likely much worse than Whitmire's current situation, and that city council cannot just make that magically disappear with a new law. So yeah, there is, some dynamics at play here, putting more power into the council members' hands as opposed to, us being a stronger mayor government than before. So there is a little pushback here. So this is a tough one. And yeah, I don't know if Mayor Whitmire handled it correctly, bringing up his Friday night plans. That probably didn't help as well, right? Just mentioning that his friends come over to their house and they park their cars, they go to dinner, and then when they come back at 9:30, it's so hard to get out. Could have phrased that a little bit better as well. This is going to be interesting to see how this plays out in 2 weeks when they vote again on this proposal.
For sure. So it's going to be a really big debate on what's an acceptable amount of disruption for an elected official and someone who's in the public eye versus peace.
But yeah, now I wonder, for these protesters or demonstrators, how is, I'm sure they're going to ramp it up as well because they really want their message to be heard about what is happening in Palestine right now. So this is, Mayor Whitmire might have, just really ignited a fire here.
Yeah, they're not, I think no one's happy in this situation.
I do want to point that earlier this month, 8 protesters were given citations for violating the city's noise ordinance during a nighttime pro-Palestine demonstration outside of Whitmire's house. So there have been tickets issued as well. So yeah, this is going to be, I want to see how this plays out now. Are they going to enforce this more, right, outside of these elected officials' houses, them being cops who are out there? So that's going to be another angle to this as they start cracking down on this a little bit more, or the protesters going to just kind of play within the rules, right, and still be out there, not make as much noise. There's so much at play here now.
Yes, when I last spoke to the protesters, they did mention how they're not planning on stopping anytime soon.
Also, it is interesting to think about Mayor Whitmire just going with a snap of a finger, like, hey, let's put a new proposal and let's put a new law in place right now. And I like that there is some pushback from council members like, no, we can't do that. That's not how this works, right? Just because something is impacting you, we don't get a chance to just put something in place. There's a process. And I like that they're sticking with that. Okay, my biggest story of the week, Shafaq. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to say this word, CenterPoint.
Oh, God.
All right. I know we don't want to hear it, but we all kind of knew this was going to happen because we saw an increase in our bills after Winter Storm Uri. But CenterPoint is planning on passing the cost of the recovery efforts after the derecho and Hurricane Beryl onto consumers who, by the way, were screwed by their actions. All right. This comes from News 88.7's Adam Zubinich. CenterPoint CEO Jason Wells said in the special Texas Senate committee hearing Monday that the utility company plans to pass its recovery costs onto its 2.8 million customers in the Houston area. Now, the total cost is going to be between $1.6 and $1.8 billion. Now, if approved by the Public Utility Commission of Texas, we could see a bill increase of about 2% over the next 15 years. CenterPoint. By the way, Sandra Havarla, the president of the Texas Consumer Association, said it best. She said, quote, customers should not be charged for bad investment decisions and weak infrastructure that resulted in multiple debts and billions in losses. Jason Wells also, again, that's the CEO of CenterPoint, said CenterPoint will increase vegetation teams after trees caused a huge part of the outages. So basically, Shafaq, he's admitting that they were saving costs by not hiring enough people before this, and now we have to pay for it. This is so frustrating because CenterPoint has billions in gross profits, and yet we still have to pay for their lack of being ready. What do you think?
I think it's just the bitter cherry on top, right? It goes without saying how exhausted Houstonians are. No one loved how Beryl ended up being. And this is just an added cost that Houstonians are going to be very unhappy with if it goes through. Though I am interested to see how the House committee is going to go about the new proposal. So earlier this week, the House State Affairs Committee did warn that a rate hearing process would need to be reviewed.
CenterPoint is any kind of business, right? At the end of the day, which is frustrating and a different conversation in itself. But anytime any business incurs any kind of damages or there's something that they have to increase in price, who ends up paying? It's the consumers, right? And I wish it was different when it came to public services like utilities, but it's not. You've got a company that's making a profit and they are worried about that profit. And we end up getting screwed. The consumers do. And it is just so frustrating. It's something that's always bugged me. But what can you do, right? Like, other than speak up, fight back a little bit, because you should not have to incur the cost of them not being ready, right? Especially when the CEO is admitting that, yeah, maybe we should have cleaned up the vegetation a little bit more. Maybe that's on us. So now we will, but we didn't before. So now we have to pay for it. Like, it makes no sense.
Maybe this is me being just too hopeful, but it is, I think, interesting to see how many leaders have very strongly stood up for Houstonians and are wanting to hold CenterPoint accountable.
We'll see how that plays out, and definitely going to be interesting to see if they back it up this time and say, hey, enough of this. No, they're not paying with the rate increase. That is something we'll watch out for.
For sure.
All right, Shafaq, let's talk about our most overlooked stories of the week. What do you got for me?
Yeah. So earlier this week, Airlines Houston released a report mapping out the 12 worst industrial air polluters in the region. So Houston is notorious for bad air quality, right? While it's gotten better, it's still low-income communities of color that face the brunt of it. There's a new map that showed where the majority of these polluters are. And to, I guess, no one's surprise if you're following where these industry plants are, they're in East Houston, largely in communities of color like Deer Park, Channelview, and Baytown. What's interesting about this, though, is that three major plants, ExxonMobil, Lyndon Basel's Channelview, and ExxonMobil's Baytown location, had the highest emission and accounted for 60% of the chemical releases in all of Harris County. This map just indicates where these big plants are and the chemical toxic pollutants that they are releasing, which have been known to be linked to cancer.
You know, we've had Jennifer Hadaya on, who's the executive director at Airlines Houston, and she's laid out so many times that these companies just aren't facing enough consequences. And it's funny, and I'm thinking about what Jennifer said because Harris County Attorney Christian Menefee added that the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, they need to update their air quality standards to be in line with federal standards. Like, we are just too light here when it comes to consequences and standards in the state of Texas. And we let industry get away with a lot, according to Airlines Houston.
Menefee added that it's difficult to hold the facilities accountable on a local level. But earlier this year, he also did file a petition calling on TCEQ to update their air quality standards to be in line with federal standards.
And I've mentioned this before, but if you have not seen the documentary on HBO yet, you got to check out God Save Texas, especially the episode on Houston that director Alex Stapleton did. And it focuses on this exact problem where communities of color are facing the consequences of industry and what it's doing to impact their neighborhoods and just how bad it is and how unfair it is. So make sure you watch that episode. I've linked it in our show notes. You do have to have a subscription, but look, hit up your friends who have HBO Max, all right? Hit it up, get it for free if you need to. Start a trial. I don't know, but make sure you watch that one. It is so enlightening. It is just frustrating, but it is enlightening that this is what's happening right here in our city.
What is your most overlooked story?
Yeah, mine is an end of an era. Pour one out for Greenspoint Mall because it officially closed this week. So Greenspoint Mall is now closed like Westwood Mall, which was once one of the big malls, and now it's like a technical college. We only have one more of these big legacy malls in the outskirts of town still out there. Plaza de America, formerly known as Sharpstown. Of course, you still got Galleria, which is like the OG, right? But Greenspoint has now officially closed. Now, Greenspoint did get this nickname of Guns Point, which has always been a thing on social media, but it has become a mainstream thing. I even heard it on ABC 13. Chaz Miller, who is a friend of the show, referenced that nickname because of that high crime in the area. And the mall was an anchor for the 45 North area when it opened in 1976. It was a part of so many childhood memories for so many Houstonians. And now it is officially gone. It has been struggling for years, but it is being closed because, according to Janet Miranda of Crime.com, a new apartment complex called Summit at Renaissance Park is being developed. And it was funded by the city of Houston as it approved a $15 million loan to help fund this 325-unit affordable workforce development as part of the Hurricane Harvey multifamily program. This area is going through a revitalization process and project funded by those Harvey funds. And hopefully this will create a new demand and create a new anchor for this community, especially because it is going to open up so much affordable housing in this new project. So the mall is gone, but something new is coming, which is nice to hear.
Yeah, it's always bittersweet to say goodbye to like a beloved area or just a landmark location. But it is exciting that it's going to be turned into very much needed affordable housing and that it will be reserved for low income families for a period of at least 4 decades.
I am going to miss seeing those random carnivals on Greenspoint Mall's parking lot. I don't know if they're still going to do those or not, but every time I drove by Greenspoint Mall, there was a random carnival that was there. I don't know why, but it's like a traveling thing. But yeah, that's one thing I'm going to miss.
Oh, those are always so much fun. But I'm sure they're traveling. They're probably going to be in some other location, right?
Yeah, they'll be in somewhere else. But shout out to Greenspoint Mall. Thank you for the memories. I remember lining up outside of stores there to grab some sneakers, right? Like that was, you could always go to Greenspoint Mall because you just felt like the lines were going to be shorter, but they were always longer. So shout out to them.
Oh gosh, I feel like I missed out. I was a big Sharpstown girly. So
Yeah.
that's where I went to my mall.
I went to Sharpstown as well. I will have a big crisis if First Colony Mall ever closes because I saw First Colony Mall. This is how old I am. I saw it being built. Like it was just grass when I used to live out there. And I saw the process of seeing that mall go up and become what it is. So if First Colony Mall in Sugarland ever closes, I'm just gonna you just gotta give me like a week to recover because that would be sad.
Oh my God, definitely the popular hangout for high schoolers for sure.
Yes, for sure. All right, let's end this on a positive note. Give me your moment of joy, Shafak.
My moment of joy is purple martins. So they've returned to Houston, and they're these birds that come in large flocks, and they just roost in the Houston area because we're a perfect point right before they migrate down to South America. So they kind of just chill here and regain their energy for a few months before they head down to South America. And while they're here, they put on a great show for us. Of course, that's not why they're here, but we definitely get to benefit for around like 45 minutes during sunset. Like hundreds of thousands of them come and just circle into the sky, and it's just a very spectacular viewing. I went last year and was totally blown away and went several more times, and I'm definitely excited to go this weekend.
Nice. That's so cool. Where did you go exactly? Like, do you want to give it out so we can go check it out too?
Oh my God, yes. So they kind of select these spots and they've been going there for years now. So there's an area in Willowbridge and there's an area in Stafford, and they just kind of roost on these 4 or 5 trees. And there's just like thousands of them on these trees. So they're like the limbs totally bent by the weight of these birds.
Wow.
So definitely check them out. It's on the Houston Audubon Society's page for the exact address.
All right. I will link that in the show notes so people can go check out the purple martins because now I want to see them. I've missed
You,
this show and I've lived here my whole life. So I'm missing out.
you definitely should, but definitely bring an umbrella as well because they do poop.
Okay. All right. Thanks for the heads up. Hey, look, it's nature. It happens. All right. Okay. My moment of joy, and stick with me here because there is nothing joyful about racism, but friend of the show, Sean the Food Sheep, handled racism with so much grace this week on Instagram that he was going viral. So Sean has been on the show with us a few times and he puts out amazing content on Instagram, TikTok, about so many great restaurants, coffee places around the city of Houston. And if you've ever watched any of his videos, you know that he wears a turban as part of his Sikh religion. Well, somebody dropped a super racist comment. I'm not going to read it here on one of his videos. And instead of putting that guy on blast and posting his name and who this guy is, Sean did the opposite. You know what he did? He mentioned the comment and he responded with grace and mentioned that this person made a big spelling issue. He misspelled turban. So instead of blasting this guy and getting him canceled, Sean donated $100 to the Barbara Bush Literacy Foundation. So that was very cool. And other people started donating as well. I saw an anonymous person donate $1,000 to the foundation. So I just want to send some love to Sean the Food Chief for handling this in such a tremendous manner because as a fellow South Asian in the public light, I get racist comments. I tend to just ignore them. Like I don't care. I've been in this so long that I just ignore them now. And if there is something that like really bugs me, I'll message the person and be like, hey, why'd you say that? I'll try to learn a little bit more. But I love that Sean didn't try to get this guy canceled. He said, look, this guy probably made a mistake and it's okay. We're not going to cancel him. So yeah, I just want to bring that to light. And look, we're both South Asian, Shafaq. So to see Sean handle it this way was really cool. And also, I wanted to talk about, like, we still get racist comments. I don't know about you, but I know I do.
Oh, of course. Yeah. And a racist comment can totally throw off a day or longer. And I think the way he handled it was very graceful for the most part. Yeah.
So shout out to Sean the Food Sheep, and let's be kind to one another, respect each other, even if you don't agree with somebody. I can't imagine why this guy got so heated, by the way. Like, it's food content. Like, what did Sean say that got you so triggered that you had to post a racist comment? Like, it makes no sense to me, but that's a discussion for another day. Shafaq, thank you so much for joining me. That was a lot of fun. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. You too.
That was Shafaq Patel. You can read all of her work with the link in our show notes, and you'll also find all of the stories we discussed today there as well. And before we end the week, one last favor. Share this episode with the last 3 people you texted. Yep, just send it to them and tell them to subscribe. And also check out our daily newsletter, Hey Houston, for more news and events throughout the week. That will do it for this week here on CityCast Houston. Our producers are Carleon Jones and Francisco Kilgore. Our newsletter editors are Brooke Lewis and Adrian Gonzalez. Our executive producer is Laura Isensee. And I'm your host, Raheel Ramzanali. Our music is by the band All the Kimonos. We'll be back on Monday with Superintendent Mike Miles as he answers your questions about HISD. Thank you for listening, and I hope you learned something new. I put you on the spot.
Okay. Oh, shoot. You did.
Okay.
Oh my God. In August, I think I went to do some. Oh my God, I have nothing. Sorry. No. I have literally nothing I'm doing in August. Let me think about this. Sorry.